The Beast-Skin Demon and the Blood Flowers by Jade, Maître. The days are cold when you do not have enough to eat. Little Kyryk had no land on which to grow crops. He had no money with which to buy warm soup or a small loaf of bread. He was thin and always sick that autumn, but he had no family or friends to nurse him. He was alone in the world. Little Kyryk worked for a rich neighbour named Pan. Pan had land because 400 years before, one of his ancestors killed a man for the king. Ever after, his family had a castle and forests and groves of fruit trees and row upon row of vegetables. Pan did not know what it was like to be hungry or cold, and because he had money, people believed he was a great man because luck had come to him so easily. This autumn, little Kyryk was pulling turnips for Pan. He would spend all day pulling turnips from the hard soil, from the moment the weak sun pierced the trees to the moment it sank, exhausted, behind the castle. Little Kyryk's back ached with the work. The sharp thorns of the naked branches scratched his hands and arms until they bled. As he worked, he shivered with the cold. At the end of each day, Pan would give him a small bowl of turnip soup. This was little Kyryk's payment. He would gulp down the soup in moments and then walk the cold path through the forest back to the tree hollow where he habitually slept. One day, little Kyryk was pulling a turnip when a sharp spear of wood flew out and struck him on the hand. It broke the skin right down to the bone. Little Kyryk ran to the castle for help. He left a trail of tiny blood drops behind him. When he got to the door, he kicked at it until Pan answered. Pan saw him standing in a pool of blood. "But you have been careless," he said to little Kyryk. "If I were to dress your wound, it would not be a lesson. What would stop you from being careless again and again? How many turnips have you not pulled as you ran to my house? You have wasted my time." And he shut the door on little Kyryk, still standing bereft in his growing lake of blood. Little Kyryk could not pull turnips with the bone sticking out of his hand. The pain was terrible and made him cry. But if he did not pull turnips, he would not be able to eat. And he knew that if he did not return immediately to work, Pan would tell him that he could not return to work there ever again. But the hand prevented him from doing anything. Little Kyryk sadly turned from the farm, his hurt hand still weeping, leaving a trail of bloody drops with every step. He walked into the forest, deep into the forest, until he stumbled on the twisted root of a branch. He fell hard to the ground. He cried out with pain. And then, as he opened his eyes, he saw that something miraculous had happened. All the tiny drops of blood had become poppies, and inside the heart of each poppy was a single gold coin. With a cry of disbelief, little Kyryk stood. Slowly and painfully, he bent to collect the first gold coin. And then, slipping it into his pocket with his good hand, he followed the trail of blood, picking up the gold coins and placing them in his pocket. He followed the trail through the forest, all the way back to the castle door, and then all the way back to the turnip field. He collected every one. Little Kyryk's pocket was heavy, but his heart was light. Could hardly believe his luck. His first stop was to the medicine man, where his hand was disinfected and the skin sewn back together and bound with clean white bandages, and he was given a strong potion to take away the pain. Next he passed by the marketplace, where he bought a pot to hold his treasure. He bought a whole loaf of bread and a fish and honey. He finally returned to his tree hollow, where he hid the gold and slept more beautifully than he ever had. Back at the castle, Pan was becoming irritated that little Kyryk had not returned to his turnips. He looked out onto the bleak landscape, and the buried turnips seemed to mock him. The sky was grey and empty. He simmered. "Little Kyryk has refused to return to work," Pan told his servant Loic, "but hunger will surely drive him back." "I saw him at the market just yesterday," said Loic. "He did not look hungry. He bought a large loaf of bread and honey and fish. He paid for them with a gold coin that sparkled like the sun." The thought that little Kyryk could have a gold coin to buy food with drove Pan into a rage. He threw all the books from his bookcase and threw the stag heads from the wall. When he had calmed himself, he started wondering where little Kyryk had found the gold. He decided he would go to talk with the poor worker. Pan strode through the forest. He finally came to the tree hollow where he knew little Kyryk slept and invited him back to his castle to talk. Little Kyryk had hidden the pot of gold, but he trusted Pan because he knew him, and innocent hearts do not believe wicked ones capable of those things they do. "You've come into money," said Pan. "Happily I have," replied little Kyryk trustingly. "A whole pot of gold, thanks to the grace of God." "And where did you find it?" Pan inquired. He thought if little Kyryk had found it on his land, he would be able to say it was his. "In forest flowers," replied little Kyryk, "bloomed from my own blood." Pan watched Kyryk return home with a silent purple anger brewing in every bone. He gazed at the mountains of ruined books and animal heads he had hurled around his castle. And then he had an idea. He tore the skins from the skulls and the rugs from the floor. He attached the animal pieces until he resembled a kind of beast. Hours later, still furious, he stalked into the forest and surprised poor little Kyryk where he slept. "Who are you?" cried little Kyryk, still believing himself to be dreaming. "I am one of God's messengers, come to you in animal form," said Pan beneath the skins. "Your selfishness displeases me. I make some men to live in castles and others to toil the earth. You are made to toil the earth. You mock my plans for you. Give your pot of gold to Pan, who I have made to live in comfort, and redeem yourself." At these words, Pan stalked back to the castle and promptly fell asleep, his rage and emotion having taken the very last of his fire. Meanwhile, little Kyryk lay terrified in the tree hollow. When he was sure the beast had gone, he found his hidden treasure and left it on Pan's doorstep. The next morning, Pan woke up and saw the pot of gold on his doorstep. He smiled to himself. "Workers are very stupid," he told himself with satisfaction. He went to bathe and then realized that he still wore the animal skins from the night before. He said. He sank deep into the bath, believing that he could soak it off. But the skin did not soak off. He stood on the stones, dripping wet, his fur in clumps. He pulled at the skin on his face. It came off with meat. With a roar of fear and pain, he pressed it back onto his cheek. He must find a medicine man. Someone must help him remove the skins. With another wild, furious roar, Pan charged through the door and ran outside. He galloped into the village, capering, drunk with panic. The medicine man did not see Pan. Pan did not get close enough. The villagers saw him raging towards them and believed him a demon. They attacked him with pitchforks. Darkness fell for Pan. Back in his tree hollow, little Kyryk woke and felt it must have all been a dream. Men were surely not made to work and starve, and others to be fat and profit. He felt very foolish for thinking so. He returned to the castle and recovered the pot of gold, and he used the pot of gold to build a community garden so that everyone could eat. The end. Storyberries.